Hi, I'm Ascendant Nomad, and I'm going to fully review and rank every Iron Banner weapon in one video. I don't think any of these are worth their own video, so I'm going to do them all in one here. Let's begin. Jorum's Claw is a solar energy adaptive pulse rifle that's been reprised from Curse of Osiris. It's basically a Suros version of Forge's Pledge, minus the horrible scopes that drifted. I only needed just 3 games to know that this is certainly one of the pulse rifles of all time. In the past, I've suggested that certain weapons can be good to get your feet wet in PvP, and adaptive pulses have always fit that bill. The stock roll from Saladin's rank up of Moving Target and Incandescent is quite honestly good enough, if you stay back and don't stick your nose in too aggressively. If by some miracle you like it enough to want to spend actual currency in engrams, then here's what not to look for. Third column, Iron Grip and Gutshot Straight actively make your gun worse. Don't do it. Iron Grip's 30 reload cost for 20 stability is too high for this archetype, despite the added stability aiding with the gun's feel in terms of bounciness and also flinch resistance, whilst Gutshot Straight guts your aim assist cones by 55% for 10% better body shot damage. Leaving aside the fact that 10% body shot damage is just not worth it, the funny thing about Gutshot Straight is that nobody really wants less aim assist. Destiny feels worse without it, trust me. Fourth column, avoid Iron Reach and Frenzy. Iron Reach massively bumps up your range at the cost of stability, and like we just said, pulse stability controls how bouncy your gun shoots and feels whilst also dictating how much flinch you receive. There's no denying that the added cleanup range is nice for safety, but it's very situational compared to other perks. And also, pulses don't generally have a range problem. Frenzy has too great an activation cost for the benefits it provides. Staying in combat for 12 seconds in the current Immortal meta with one of the slowest priming time to kills in the game is a very tall order. But if you need a solo pulse for PvE, Frenzy is one of your better perk options. The good thing about this archetype is its forgiveness. You only need 6 crit and 1 body out of 9 bullets to kill at all resilience values. If you pick up an orb and you have 1 solar surge mod equipped, it becomes a 2 burst, requiring 5 crits and 1 body for a 0.6 second time to kill. That can be pretty great in the right situations. In PvE, thanks to the recent 20% pulse buff, adaptives feel rather capable now in underlevel content. On Neomuna, I didn't feel like this was a bad option at all, but it was far from spectacular. From a solar pulse perspective, it's better than BXR due to its high damage profile, and far less awkward to shoot than Stars and Shadow, which admittedly does hit harder. And that would be the end of this section if it wasn't for one perk in particular. Golden Tricorn. On even just a single kill, the damage buff from X1 is very noticeable and welcome, but if you get a second kill with a solar ability, that gives you Golden Tricorn X2 and a 50% damage buff for 10 seconds, which turns the entirety of Neomuna into a downright joke. Solar abilities tend to be quite lethal on all 3 classes, so getting X2 shouldn't be too difficult. Get a kill, then either grenade your enemy, hammer bonk them, or use something to ignite them. Being that it's a solar weapon, it means I get some serious uptime on my Hunter Ignition build, and it's more than capable with the right flow. On Neomuna, it definitely felt a little awkward at times due to the enemy density and just how close range you are for so much of it, but it definitely delivered. So for those reasons, I'm putting this pulse as good for PvE and good for PvP. It's not going to blow your mind, but it's a solid option all around. Good pickup, especially for Golden Tricorn, which turns this into a 2 burst with X1. Bite of the Fox returns from Season of Arrivals in virtually the same manner we left it in. It's a 43 zoom aggressive frame sniper, making this the lowest zoom aggressive in the game. This should be on every PvP player's radar if for whatever reason Succession isn't quite doing it for you. Aesthetically, it's a bit of an acquired taste, but the chevron scope and the fantastically mechanical sound are enough to turn anyone into a convert. Pair that with the fact that it still rolls some fan favorites like Snapshot and Opening Shot, and even Firmly Planted Opening Shot, and it's a timely reminder that this sniper is a genuine winner of a gun. The new third column perks are Slick Draw, No Distraction, and Envious Assassin, the latter being incredibly useless in PvP given that you spawn with 2 bullets and no reserves. In column 4 we have Vorpal, which is useless again because this one-shots practically every super in the game, Iron Gaze, which ramps up your aim assist at the cost of range, and Under Over, whose usefulness eludes even the finest minds of our generation. So really, you're left with a choice of Snapshot, Rapid Hit, and Firmly Planted in column 3, maybe No Distractions for something like Trials where you're not moving around a lot, whilst in In column 4, it's between explosive payload, moving target, and opening shot. If you're going purely for consistency, then your best bet will probably be firmly planted and moving target, since firmly planted gives some rather nice bumps to stability, handling, accuracy, and even reduces horizontal recoil by 80%. You do need to be crouched for it to work, but that's a very small price to pay. But I suspect most of you will be chasing snapshot and opening shot quite simply because of its versatility, flexibility, and forgiveness when sniping aggressively. If you're a newer player, or Dado's vault cleaning videos bullied you into deleting a sniper you've not used in a while, this is absolutely worth focusing for in PvP. In PvE, there's not a whole lot for you here. Sorry. Don't even bother with anything outside of a Vorpal roll, but even then it doesn't roll with triple tap, so for that reason it goes straight to bad for PvE. It shoots fine and does good damage, but snipers are all about perk selection in PvE, and this has one of the worst. In PvP, this goes straight to the very top. It's elite. Hero's Burden has got a little bit of a perk overhaul to actually have like good usable perks this time around. Wow. Being an adaptive SMG, it's sort of the ugly duckling of the SMG family. It has decent stats that make the weapon feel good, but it's ever so slightly more unforgiving than their cousins, which makes its 0.73 time to kill feel a little off in comparison. In PvP, there's nothing that this can do that other SMGs already can't. It's got a touch more range than most of the lightweight 900 RPM SMGs at base, but Ikelos is the de facto king of this slot, and it's not being dethroned anytime soon. That being said, it's got a good suite of perk combinations to make your experience with this weapon interesting, like moving target and kill clip, or Zen moment and iron reach. In PvE, it's a different story. You may want to pay attention to one particular perk, destabilizing rounds. As of the release of this video, volatile rounds is an artifact perk that pretty much all of us run all of the time. However, when this goes away next season, we're going to find it much harder to proc volatile rounds without a void subclass. Enter destabilizing rounds. Kills with this weapon make nearby enemies volatile, and killing them will chain the volatility onto others. Being an SMG, it's well suited right now to underlevel content, be that Neo Moon and patrolling or attempting Legend and Master content. However, adaptives have the hardest time of them all since they have the worst damage profile of any SMG subfamily, according to Mossy's outgoing damage weapon spreadsheet. Volatility seemingly on command can more than make up the deficit in pure performance, but it definitely feels like the Wish.com version of volatility thanks to the gun's base damage. If you really wanted the full power of volatility, you'd be running Void 3.0 with Funnel Web or Unforgiven. That all being said, right now, it's the only primary in the game that can roll with it. I just think it's going to collect dust in your vault once you compare its raw performance to Funnel Web, at least for the time being. Rankings wise, this is good for PvE, and for PvP, it's also just good. It's nothing special to write home about, but it can do a job. I've lost track of which refresh number we're on with Wizened Rebuke, but this latest one actually makes me intrigued again. I've never heard my friend Lego LaFlash, resident fusion rifle expert and annoyingly photogenic person, be so excited to just talk about a weapon. Turns out, he has a point. Immediately looking at the perk pool, you can see we've got some interesting things happening here. On the PvP side, we've got Under Pressure, Offhand Strike, and Heating Up, paired with Backup Plan, Successful Warm-Up, and High Impact Reserves. For PvE, we've got Volt Shot. And as some of you may already know, Volt Shot's tick rate is the highest on fusion rifles at this present time. It's second only to glaives and rocket launchers according to Mossy's spreadsheet, but we don't have either one of those with Volt Shot just yet. In PvP, there's a small learning curve with this archetype that takes some getting used to because of that charge time, but I'm happy to say that when you do learn it, it feels very consistent. In an age where immortal SMGs are raining down upon you from every corner of every map, playing back and having a one-hit kill option in your back pocket is super handy. Fusions are one of the best hard counters to this current reign of terror, and with Backup Plan, your charge time gets brought down to roughly the same as precision frames like Main Ingredient or Plug 1.1. Because of that, it's very worth target focusing a Under Pressure and Backup Plan roll. The rest of the perks should be optimized for either range for added damage falloff or stability for ultra consistency. In PvE, that Volt Shot damage is really good. Now, Iterative Loop is another arc fusion that can also roll Volt Shot as well as Compulsive Reloader to keep the chains going, and it's craftable. The problem is that it's a rapid fire frame, meaning it's not hitting very hard in underlevel content. Wizened Rebuke is a high impact frame and has no such issues whatsoever, and the Volt Shot tick damage is higher since it's a function of base damage. The downside is that Wizened is an awkward customer in PvE due to its charge time and overall low handling, which doesn't work too well when things get busy. You want to feel light on your feet, and Wizened makes you want to stay still. Rankings wise, this is solidly great in both PvP and PvE. The only reason it's not elite is because of that charge time, which demands a lot of the user in PvP and can be ill-suited for enemy dense content in PvE, requiring you to farm for a role that has decent reload speed for Volt Shot. I'm going to quickly go over the rest because they didn't change that much and they're fairly well-known quantities already. Some of these are identical to their previous versions, but since they got the Season of Defiance logo on them, they're technically new. Allied Demand is an adaptive sidearm and one of the best out there. The only thing that's new for the season is that the mags finally have ricochet rounds, light mag, armor piercing, and high cal at the expense of steady rounds and accurized rounds. It's got some very good perks for PvP, including a ridiculous rangefinder and iron reach roll, but also more usable stuff for PvE, like Subsistence and Frenzy. Damage-wise, this is a good weapon for both PvP and PvE, but it's being drowned out right now in both sandboxes by SMGs. In PvE in particular, it's a bit of an awkward customer with its relatively low mag size and so-so handling. It's occupying the same role as an SMG with none of their upsides. Being a kinetic sidearm too means that you lose out on the elemental goodness of Stasis and Strand, and if you're going to run a sidearm over an SMG, it really does need to have some added oomph to it, like being part of a combat loop for a particular build. But since it doesn't have that oomph, by virtue of it being a kinetic sidearm, it's really hard to recommend over literally any SMG in the slot. For my PvP role, I'm going with rangefinder and multi-kill clip, whilst for PvE, I'm opting for Subsistence and Frenzy. Solidly great in PvP, but very much just okay in PvE. Dark Decider got the same mag treatment as Allied Demand, but otherwise there's nothing new here. This weapon genuinely feels horrible to use, and the perk selection doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. Golden Tricorn could be a good option as part of a Titan build with Actium War Rig and Lightning Grenades, but you're going to have to be very aggressive and really down to use a 720 auto that has a mind of its own when it comes to recoil direction. Seriously, even with Arrowhead Break and a counterbalance mod, it still doesn't feel good. Not worth your time under any circumstance right now, even with the 25% buff to autos. Bad in PvP, okay in PvE. Gunnora's axe hasn't changed a bit. Great PvP shotgun and somewhat good for PvE as it can roll with Volt Shot. There's no 4th times the charm and Vorpal for your copium needs here, but it's a solid entry all around. Saladin's threat detector and opening shot roll is good enough for PvP. Worth focusing if you enjoy slugs. Finally, Roar the Bear is a high-impact rocket launcher. It's also completely unchanged from the last time it came around. It's a fine rocket for PvP, rolling Impulse Amplifier and Chain Reaction. For PvE, it can definitely put in a shift with Field Prep, Vorpal, and Impact Casing, but both adaptive and aggressive frame rockets are significantly better for DPS options currently. It can roll Incandescent, which makes this an intriguing option to have for any Ignition builds in PvE, worth focusing for if you have nothing better, but do try out that Incandescent roll if you get one. So after all that, which Iron Banner weapon is the best, and which one is worth farming? For PvP, it's Bite of the Fox without a shadow of a doubt. Do not leave Iron Banner without getting a good roll. For PvE, it's less straightforward, but most will probably say Hero's Burden with destabilizing rounds. Personally, I think it's a bit overrated and much prefer Jorum Claw's utility as an all-rounder with Golden Tricorn. Shout out to Wizened Rebuke, since it's excellent for everything despite having a bit of a learning curve to use well. And that's it. Hope this video helps. What weapons are your favorites? Sound off in the comments below. As ever, a huge thanks to our patrons who continue to make these videos possible. I'm Ascendant Nomad, and thank you for watching. Cheers.